Al?
Dr. Peter Kuznick is a professor of history at American University. Thank you so much for joining us here on WUSA 9 Plus. Let's talk about what this new administration, what we can expect from a second Trump term here.
Well, we can expect the unexpected. I mean, it's so hard to predict what Trump is going to do. He's already contradicted many things that he said he was going to do. He talked, for example, about trade war with China, talked about 60% tariffs. He used to talk about banning TikTok. His first administration was quite hostile toward China. Now he says the first foreign trip he wants to make is to visit Xi Jinping. He's got the vice president of China at the inauguration today, and he invited Xi Jinping himself. He's going to overturn the TikTok ban or resolve that somehow. I mean, the policies, that's why it's so hard to predict him, because if you look at his administration, it's full of China hawks. Marco Rubio's testimony was extremely provocative toward China, and then Trump goes the other direction. So Trump is transactional. We know that's his nature, and he wants to make deals.
Well, to that end, we've seen Elon Musk take a really sort of important position. That's what it looks like now with this incoming administration. And you talk a lot about cultural movements and the shifts. How much of that influence do you think is going into things like social media, artificial intelligence, that sort of sector as we move into these next 4 years?
It looks like, in the beginning at least, Trump has got an extraordinary amount of influence. Musk has an extraordinary amount of influence over Trump. But we don't know, because you've got his MAGA base on one side, and you've got the tech bros on the other side. We already saw the controversy over the H-1B visas, where Trump's base wants to not give H-1B visas, and Musk insists upon it. 70% of those H-1B visas for highly skilled workers, software engineers and others, go to Indians. I was on Indian TV earlier this morning. They're very concerned about that. So we don't know how long this alliance, which seems in some ways to be an unholy alliance, is going to hold together. Right now, it's very, very firm.
There is a lot of uncertainty ahead, but can you speak to what we know for sure, what we should be watching closely in the first 100 days?
Well, we know he's doubled down on, he was coming across as a more benign version of himself, but if you heard yesterday's rally, that was the old Trump, the Trump with the grievances, the Trump who's going to get revenge. That was the Trump who's going to deport millions of immigrants very quickly, and to do that, that's not something that can be done easily. Maybe you can pick out a certain number of immigrants who have committed violent crimes, and everybody will support that. But if he's going to do the mass roundup that he's threatening to do, that's going to have an enormous impact. But even his immigration policy overall goes against the business interests, because the business interests are very much dependent on those immigrants, not necessarily the handful of violent ones, but he's talking about deporting 20 million immigrants over the long run. He wants to deport more immigrants than anybody else ever has. So that's number one. Number two, he's going to pardon most of the 9/11, most of the January 6th people who got incarcerated. That's not popular in the country. Rounding up the illegal immigrants is popular, but the mass roundup is not popular. So we have to see, is he going to do tariffs? Tariffs would have a very detrimental impact, not only on the economy, but especially on the American working people.
From your perspective, Doctor, though, when you talk about these things, you're talking about the tariff and how that will have an impact. Those are concrete things. You're talking about pardoning the January 6th group, the ones that were locked up, who were during his last administration, who stormed the Capitol before, after he lost the election. Him saying all these things about what he's going to do with all these different things, does that matter though? We can talk about, okay, he's going to pardon January 6th. Will that have an impact? Will that have any kind of impact on his base, or will it have an impact on the people that are on the fringes that are looking at him and say maybe he's not that bad?
Well, he's got the potential right now. He did win the popular vote. He didn't get over 50%, but he did win the popular vote. He talks about this tremendous landslide victory. It was one of the closest margins ever. But he's got a little bit. Presidents usually come in with a honeymoon. However, we know Donald Trump from the first term, and people got very, very tired of Donald Trump by the end of his first presidency, and he got defeated by Joe Biden. So, his leash is probably shorter than most presidents when they get a certain honeymoon period, because he's going to bring back a lot of those memories of the things that he did were so divisive. And so, but he's got the potential to go a different direction. Is he capable? Is Donald Trump capable of different game plan than he had the first time? I thought maybe, given the fact that, first of all, he deserves a lot of the credit for the ceasefire in Gaza, which is a positive step. He talks about ending the war in Ukraine, which would be a very positive step. He's even talking about a conciliatory approach toward China, which would be another positive step. But the question is his domestic policy. His foreign policy might be looking good. We don't know for sure, but his domestic policy could backfire.
As we are speaking with our distinguished guest, we do want to take a moment just to recognize Vivek Ramaswamy there and other members of Congress that we're seeing filing in to the Capitol Rotunda, as we are now just a little bit over an hour and a half away from the ceremony taking place there. Lots of familiar faces representing these United States. So we're just seeing people filing in here as we continue to speak with our guest. And I'd like to ask, you also talk a lot about American sexuality, if you will. And this is a president that has talked a lot about transgender rights and the LGBTQ community. What do you see here as far as things that could really change or limitations that could be put on this community?
It could be ugly.
Yeah.
And he's talking about getting rid of the woke military leaders, for example. But then he sends a different message. He's out there on the stage with the Village People, and singing YMCA, which is the gay national anthem in America. Maybe Trump doesn't quite know that.
Right. I think a lot of people didn't know it when that song came out, that was the message there. So perhaps
but
not.
now people know it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, but that's a kind of raw meat for Trump's base, talking about especially trans people.
Yes.
And it's going to be very, very uncomfortable in the United States. They were already doing away with the DEI, and most of the corporations have done that even before there was pressure on them to do that. So we see a certain sucking up, a certain acquiescence, obsequiousness toward Trump already on the part of business community and others as well. There's not the kind of fight and resistance that we saw in 2017 toward Trump. There's a kind of sense of resignation, almost a feeling of defeatism about Trump this time from the people who were opposed. You have to remember that here in D.C., Trump got 4% of the vote in 2016. 4%, that's mind-boggling. So this is not friendly territory, even still in that regard. But in rural America, clearly he resonated.
There's been a lot of talk among the 100 executive orders that he's talking about the federal workforce and implementing the mandate to go back into the workplace. Of course, COVID-19 reshaped all of that, and many people ended up working from home, and it has become sort of our new normal. What does that look like, if you can shed some light on that?
Well, not only is there a lot of pressure for people to go back into the workplace, but he's talking about firing huge numbers of federal employees. Right. One of the concerns people have is the level of competence. There was a word that was popular in the late 19th century, kakistocracy, and that means government by the worst people. Many of the people who Trump has nominated or appointed are people who don't have any expertise, don't have any competence. For example, Linda McMahon from the World Wrestling Federation to head up the Department of Education. It's a joke, right? And the world, so the question is, are they going to be competent people? Is he going to replace competent career people in the federal bureaucracy with incompetent employees who are loyal to him? You know, we haven't seen that. Trump is a different kind of president. And some of it could be very frightening, and some of it, you never know, could be positive. These people don't believe in the institutions. They want to blow things up. And a lot of Americans want change. When Kamala Harris was asked how she's going to differentiate herself from Biden, and she said she didn't think of any way she's going to, that was the wrong message. People do want change, but they want constructive, positive change, which is what we're waiting to see.
Right. As we take, we're still looking live at people filing into the rotunda. We saw D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser walking in as well, along with other dignitaries who are here to participate in the inauguration today. One last question. I know we have to go. In history, you're a historian, so
Yes.
you've studied presidents for a long time. Is there any comparison to what's going on right now to any other president or administration that you've seen, that you've studied in history, whether it be current or a long time ago?
The only comparison I make is to Trump's first term.
Right.
Trump is different. There's never been anybody like him. Somebody he's got some interesting new ideas on occasion, but he's also got very fascistic proclivities. When he talks about the purity of the blood and the purity of the race, his first wife said he used to keep a book of Hitler's speeches on his night table, and we know where this kind of language comes from. Is that going to be the Donald Trump, or are we going to get a refreshing Donald Trump? We don't know yet. We're waiting to see.
Dr. Peter Kuznick is a professor of history at American University. We've really enjoyed your perspective.
Yes, thank
and
you.
your,
Thank
yes,
you.
thank you so much for joining us.